And good evening, everyone, and welcome into the program. I'm your host for Tigers Tonight, John Maddox, joined as always by the best co-host in all the land. Start with our friend from our northern offices, the northern contingent, Mr. Brian Moss. Brian, how are you, sir?
Jack and Coke. That's about it. That's all I got.
Yeah. Well, there are a lot worse ways to spend a Tuesday evening, and from, of course, the palatial Marley Manor here in beautiful, scenic, crime-free Hernando, Mississippi. Larry Marley is with us. Larry, how are you, sir?
I am as good as you can be on this Tuesday, it's good. I just got back from Dallas and to this morning, this afternoon. So, it's funny. I was in Dallas, and I don't know if you guys know this, but TCU got destroyed by SMU on Saturday, and where I was yesterday was in Fort Worth. And so I went to lunch after I did what I had to do, and there was some TCU fans that were still like shell shocked, and I was just sitting there like commiserating because we know exactly how they feel. So
yeah, that feeling is pervasive. Anything happened this weekend? Any Memphis football news? Anything going on this weekend? It felt like it was a slow. Oh, yeah. It was the opposite of slow. Easily, and we're going to get into this after Navy and MTSU, but it is easily the most chaotic off the field day I can ever recall. I'd say that whole 72-hour period from Saturday morning till last night was just pure and total chaos. Just, I've never seen anything like it. And it's not done. So, Brian is hereby banished from attending Memphis football games going forward into the future because he was in attendance at Navy Marine Corps Stadium in Annapolis, where Memphis falls 56-44.
Well, I can tell you where the problem was. I was in the press box and not the coach's box. But,
yeah,
we can continue.
Right. Memphis has 659 yards in offense, 385 passing, 275 rushing, only committed 4 penalties, did turn it over one time, averaged 7 yards a play, 11.5 yards of completion, lost by 12, and it really wasn't that close. Memphis made a pretty big charge at the end to try to get back in it, but just unfathomable how poorly the defense played. So, Brian, we'll start with you since you were at the scene of the crime. What are some of your thoughts?
Yeah, I was just very, very surprised on how the defense played. I mean, for the first 3 weeks, I'm tweeting out, Hankins deserves a raise, and now it's like, let's walk that back a little bit. But this is the worst defensive effort I think I've seen in quite some time. It just the players at times just look like they didn't want to be there. They look like they were lost at times, especially when Navy started passing a little bit. Linebackers and DBs just seemed like, oh, they can do that. It seemed like a lot of the times they were out of position. The angles to get to the runner, it seemed like their angles were off. Yeah, I don't know. It was just because the way Memphis started, the 2 out of the first 3 possessions, I believe was touchdowns. So I mean, the way you started, and then all of a sudden the second quarter happened, and it just all collapsed. But yeah, just very, very shocked on the play. Second and third quarter, and how offensively you really couldn't get stuff going, and defensively it's just, wow, what an effort by Navy. I mean, credit goes to Navy. I mean, let's not take anything away from Navy. It seemed like they had the perfect game plan, and if Navy had an accurate quarterback, this game could have been seriously in the 70s for Navy. I mean, they would just, it was bad. Let's put it that way.
So what I saw was let's first start by saying there's zero reason why you lose to Navy scoring 44 points. Zero reason. That should never happen. What I saw was we came out in a basic 3-3, 3 down linemen, 3 linebackers, trying to flow to the ball. And they would offset those 3 trying to flow to the ball. And what I saw Navy doing was basically, if we did this, they ran to the opposite side. And you would see Horvath sort of split or flip the play. I also thought that they used our speed against us. That's the first time that's really happened, where they did a lot of veers and a lot of throwbacks against the grain. They got us
Hello, no one.
And then take advantage of that speed. I just thought that Memphis overall. So it's one thing to get sort of blindsided by that in the first half. I can certainly see that, but to not adjust, that was what was really frustrating, because last year we saw the adjustment in the second half, whereas there was no adjustment. We did not adjust. Horvath, first off, Horvath was a lot faster than we thought. Would you guys not agree with that? And he was able to break down our angles. But having said that, like, there was no adjustment, and it was the most disappointing coaching that I saw of the year,
and the worst tackling I think I've seen in quite some time as well.
I did not have Larry having the first animal appearance of the podcast on the bingo card tonight. That would be Nolan.
That was Nolan. He says hi.
Yeah. So just a handful of things. I echo everything you guys said. I think, but I'll be honest. I think we tried to adjust, but guys, sometimes the other team just has the perfect game plan. I mean, and Memphis was at a bit of a disadvantage here because this is not Navy. Like, this is not, somebody said, oh, they got burned by the triple option. I went back and counted. Navy had 2 big plays on the pure triple option. They had 2 big plays. They got Memphis in flex bone. They got Memphis in speed. They got they out-schemed Memphis, and you're dead on that Memphis's speed and aggression was used against them. And I think, that is what I would have asked Coach Hankins is, how are you going to get the guys to go from being aggressive to being assignment football? Because you can't play Navy the same way you play everybody else, because even though they did not run a ton of triple option, they are still going to do the same things to you. They are still, it's still about angles and contain. And guys, that was as poor of a containment job as I've seen by Memphis on the defensive end in several years. I mean, guys are just constantly getting sucked down inside and, giving up the edge. And, we talk about little things, and Memphis had the ball for 36 minutes. So if you took the score away and you look at all those stats, there's no way Memphis loses this game. But what I was about to say is the Navy, little things we talk about attention to detail, like especially on that long 90-yard Horvath run, those Navy wide receivers sold routes. They sold routes like candy bars, because they were taking guys down the field and not blocking until the absolute last possible second. And they just, some days the other team is just better. Now, I agree that Memphis scoring 44 points and losing is unacceptable. And I haven't had a chance to go back. I'm getting ready to leave for 2 weeks. I haven't had a ton of time to dig around, but that has to be, in at least a handful of seasons, the most Memphis has scored in a loss. Nothing just jumps out at me off the top of my head, but
maybe the AC championships against UCF.
Maybe, yeah.
Because it was a 2017 or 2018. It was the last time Memphis had 2 100-yard rushers.
2018.
And 2018, and then 2 100-yard receivers and still lost.
Well, let's take a couple of the positives from this game. The Memphis running game woke up, right? I mean, we can agree that 274 rushing yards is waking up. Again, we should all love something as much as Ryan Silverfield loves Brandon Thomas. And Thomas requited that love on Saturday, had 125 yards. Mario Anderson Jr. with 117 yards. Brandon broke that big 57-yard touchdown run off. So all in all, Memphis averaged 7.2 yards a carry on the offensive side of the football. Again, these numbers are staggering. They blow your mind to look at. And I'll tell you something that kind of went under the radar. One thing that Navy obviously did a lot of things well, but one of the things they did, Anthony Lamphere and Brendan Doyle, 2 catches for 8 yards. They took the Memphis tight ends completely out of the game. Kobe Drake, Rock Taylor, huge days. But Memphis, while that's great, Memphis needs the tight ends to be more involved, Brian. And Navy just did again. They just did a great job of just kind of taking everything away that the Memphis offense likes to do.
Yeah, and there was some questionable play calling. This is the first time this year that I'm questioning any play calling. I believe it was 8 minutes left to go in the game. And I don't think they were in the red zone, but they were still, you were on the opponent's side. And you had it was the first down where I think they ran and fumbled, and then 3 straight passes. And I'm like, I think they were in the red zone, maybe on the 10-yard line. But you had, I think they were on the 10-yard line. You had 10 yards, and you passed 3 straight times. You're averaging at the time it was over 7 yards per carry. And I just,
I got a better one.
I mean, just stuff like that is what irritates me.
We ran the ball. There was a drive in the fourth quarter where we ran the ball basically for 90 yards, got a touchdown, 2-point conversion, we pass. I'm like, why? Look, let me be very clear. Cramsey called overall a really good game. And we can parse out like a play call here and there. If the defense does their job, this is not an issue. And you can take Seth should have looked off the safety. Okay, that's fine. He should have taken the underneath route on that play. Fine, whatever. Point is, defense does their job. You score enough points, this game's over, and that's just it. And so, but I'm with you, Brian. Like there was a couple of times where I just like, what? But
yeah, it seemed like especially in the on some of those drives, it just seems like Memphis was overthinking it. It just reminded me of Mike Norvell outthinking
Justin
himself.
Puente.
It's like just do what works. The running was working. Keep with
it simple.
Yeah.
Well, the couple of things that bothered me was the first 2-point attempt. Came with 1:11 to go in the third quarter. You're down 35-20. You're down 35-30 at that point. Take the point there. You don't. I mean, I get the math per se.
Yeah.
But you're overthinking this. Like you're overthinking what's going on.
Way too early in the game for that.
And just get your point. When you're in a game where points are going to be at a premium, right? And then where they said Kobe Drake didn't control the ball. That's an absolutely horrendous call in the end zone. It's a horrific call. The ball can move. There's no rule that says it can't. He never lost possession. Just a horrendous call. But to your point, we shouldn't have been in that spot. We had 44 points. We're putting 44 points up on the board. But those two things just changed everything. Yeah, and it's very reminiscent of Mike going for it against Memphis. It just going for 2, Florida State 2 weeks ago. It reeks of desperation, and it feels like you're reaching. It just I don't know. I didn't. Most of the play calling I was fine with. All of our 98% of our problems were on defense, but just going for it for 2 there in that spot. And then it's just a bad call. But again, it happens. never should have been in that spot. But that call literally changes how you play the rest of the game. Seth
Yeah, that's
never
right.
throws that interception if that's called.
Because you're and I'll tell you this. I think we're running the ball and right there, and I'll tell you, I'm not sure we aren't better for it because I mean, anyway, yes, that call, the Colby Drake call, changed the whole game because you get the onside kick, which is that was a great play, and now you don't have to score a touchdown. Now you got to do is get in field goal range. It changes how you call the game, how they play defense. It's an entire different feel to the game. And I know we're going to talk about this, but the AAC officials have just been, over the last, 3 or 4 years, guys, they've been very suspect.
Well, I do want to say one thing because I'm not that guy. That call is not the reason Memphis lost the game. Memphis lost the game defensively and with some sketchy play calling at times. But it is a case where it did impact the game, and it did change how the game ended because, again, Memphis is running the ball because even at that point, they're averaging 7 yards a carry. So you get down 30-yard line or so, you run the ball 3 times, bleed the clock, call your timeout, kick the ball, and walk off the field.
Let overtime play itself out.
Yep. In a game you had no business being in at that stretch, like Memphis had no business, everybody left Memphis for dead. And to their credit, the Tigers come back. Seth Hennigan is 32 of 56. That is not a recipe for Memphis to win football games. Seth Hennigan throwing the ball 56 times.
Yep.
Got to be the most plays Memphis has run this year. Yeah, Memphis ran 95 plays. Y'all, this is incredibly crazy how Memphis loses this game. Every single number except the scoreboard. You're talking about Horvath's accuracy. I mean, he was 9 of 12 for 192 yards. I mean, his
that's a career high.
264.4 was his rating. We did a good job stopping the dive. They busted us one time for about 20 yards. Tezeka got about a 20-yard bust on that. Heidenreich got a 16-yarder, but Memphis stopped the dive, which is one of the keys. They played the wheel route pretty well. Navy worked the seams too. That was the thing about their passing game is they worked the middle of the field. They just worked seams, and Memphis had gotten behind, so they didn't want to come out and they'd gotten behind because of big plays. So Memphis didn't want to come out of their zone. So, look, credit to Drew Cronick, who is the offensive coordinator for Navy. And, again, he just called a great game. It happens.
Yep.
I was looking here. I was trying to find, I can't find the tool I'm looking for. Big plays. There we go. So Memphis had 9 plays of 15 yards or more, 17 plays of 10 or more yards in the game, 8 rushing plays, which gained more than 10 yards, and 9 passing plays. Navy had 7 plays that gained 250 yards on the ground, 258 rushing yards on 7 plays. That's the difference in the game. You have the quarterback keeper. Horvath's touchdown runs were not your typical touchdown runs. 46, 60, and 90. That you're not going to win games, Larry, doing that. You're not going to win games giving up 204 yards on 3 quarterback keepers.
It's unfathomable. And the last one, the long 90-yarder, I hate to say that they quit because I don't want to say that, but there was very little effort on that. There was, that he once he broke the contain, there was no angles, nothing like that. I mean, he just literally ran down the field. That defense was so frazzled and had no idea how to contain them. They looked frustrated and just completely deflated by the time he makes that run. Now, to their credit, they did stop Navy on the next drive. And now you can say Navy wasn't really trying or whatever, but I you know, like you and I talk about, John, that defense looked like they wanted to be in 100 million other places than Annapolis, Maryland, that right then. I mean, and I just thought that if somehow they needed to catch a breath and just get away from it and just because they were overthinking everything and they just didn't know where to go.
Yeah, and that's a position where, in as a basketball analogy, you just call a timeout. You just set guys down, call a timeout, and say, "Guys, settle down." You can't do that in football. And Navy, again, to Drew Cronick's credit, I mean, he had the perfect game plan against Memphis, which is let them run themselves out of plays, which the Tigers did 24 times. Let them use their speed, let them get upfield. A lot of what we call window dressing was zone with jet motions and all that. A lot of window dressing. Like on that 90-yard touchdown run, they bring the jet motion across. And I knew when he came across the face of the quarterback, I think I told Susan, I was like, they're going to score. Because once he got, I should have stopped the play, but once he got to the hole, it was over because Memphis had everybody up and guys were standing flat-footed facing the end zone, and you just can't physically recover. And Horvath was fast, and Navy they did a good job. Is a really disappointing loss, I think, for Memphis. I kind of guess I've gone through, what is it, the stages of grief? Who is that? I can't remember. Anyway, because I was really angry at the end of the game. Because I was angry with the effort, to your point, Larry, especially late. But now I'm disappointed. And I do want to say that, and fans we're all the worst about this, right? Well, there goes Memphis's college football playoff chances. No, I think your margin for error is 100% gone. You can't slip up again. And now you're going to have to get outside assistance from somebody not in the AAC. You're going to have UNLV lose here or there. You're going to have because their schedule is good enough to overcome a loss. You're going to have them lose a couple times. Liberty's probably going to have to lose. I know I'm leaving somebody out, but now you've got to have help, and that's not the position you want to be in.
And all those teams will lose at some point as well, because I don't think the G5 representative will be undefeated. And I mean, if we're being honest, I think when we were giving our preseason prediction, I think, John, you're the only one that had Memphis 4-0 at this point. I know I had them at 3-1. I had them losing to FSU but beating Navy. But just going on the record, most fans, had Memphis 3-1 at this point, just not losing to Navy.
The worst part is losing a conference game. That's the worst part. All the rest of that is whatever. I'm not going to sit here and lose a whole bunch of sleep over if we do or do not go to the playoff. This is all about, to me, is all about, do we still have a chance to win the conference? The answer is absolutely. You can still do that. We need to focus in on that. We've got some really tough conference games coming up. And don't worry about all that other stuff. Because if you win your conference, I mean, the rest of that, whatever it is, will take care of itself, right? So first thing you got to do, because you've got to be the conference champion to even think about that. So here's what I do. Just focus in on Middle Tennessee this week. Get ready for a tough South Florida game that you got coming up. And just concentrate on that for the foreseeable future. And don't let all this other junk,
And Navy has to play, I think they play at South Florida and they're home against Tulane. So, I mean, they're going to lose some conference games coming up. So I don't think, Navy will go undefeated in this conference. So you have a chance, just like you said. Your goal of going to the conference championship is still there.
Do I think there's a chance Memphis sees Navy again in the conference championship?
I don't.
I don't either. But I tell you what I think could happen if Memphis were to falter down the stretch. I think if Memphis sees any service academy in the conference championship, it'll probably be Army.
Yeah.
Their schedule is so easy. If you take a look at it, it's right there for them.
And wouldn't it be wild? So how would that work if Army and Navy made the championship game? Would they just play back-to-back weeks?
I guess so.
Because the AAC championship is before Army Navy, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they would play in the championship game, and then one of them, I'm assuming, if Army or Navy wins the league, they're going to go undefeated or lose once. So wow, that's wild. Okay, you could have a scenario where Army and Navy play back-to-back weeks. Whoever wins that first week is probably going to the playoff, but this might be the only time when they would view that second game as more important than the conference championship to go to the playoff. So, hello, Duncan. Thank you for stopping by the show.
Duncan's trying to get an OnlyFans account.
Yeah. Well, if it'll help pay some bills around here, I'm all for it. Really, dude. I can't say it because he's been on my desk all day. Nolan has made his appearance. So
Nolan made his appearance, and now we have.
Yeah, we have Duncan. It's a regular zoo around these parts.
Yeah.
All right, so that takes care of. Sorry, I don't mean to keep flashing words. Duncan decides he wants to lay on the keyboard. All right, so we have Memphis coming up against Middle Tennessee. We're going to step aside for just a couple minutes, and then I think Shayne is still going to join us from GoMiddle.com, and we will hopefully have him come on board here. We'll be back. Thanks for tuning in. You're watching Tigers Tonight. And welcome back to Tigers Tonight. John Maddox, Brian Moss, Larry Marley with you. And we are joined now by Mr. Shayne Pickering of GoMiddle.com, which is the rival site for Middle Tennessee State University. Shayne, I think you're still muted there, but how are you this evening, our friend? Thanks for joining us here tonight on the show.
I'm doing good. Excited to talk some football.
All right, well, let's start there. Middle Tennessee coming off a disappointing loss to Duke on Saturday. So what's kind of been the story of Middle Tennessee this season?
I'd say the main thing is that they don't know how to finish yet. It's still a very new team. They added around 60 new players, and they're still learning how to finish drives, how to finish them with points. They've been to the red zone several times and came away with 0 points. They've had several turnovers, and that's kind of the main thing right now. They're moving the ball, and the offense is kind of the part that they're hanging their hat on. But finishing the drives empty, they don't have anything coming away from that. So that would be the big thing, the big storyline of this season so far.
It's good to talk about, the Coach Mason. Is this his first year? I couldn't remember.
This is, yes.
Yeah, first season. From your perspective, what has he brought differently? That the MTSU fans can rally around. What have you seen so far this year in Coach Mason?
He's definitely brought a lot more intensity to the program, whether that's on the recruiting trail or just in general, creating and hiring multiple specific jobs around the program. This first year, especially with the stretch they've had early on, was always going to be brutal, really. And then just that intensity. It's probably not going to show up year one, but the results will continue moving forward. And I think that's where you're really going to get excited about, especially with new facilities coming in, banking off of that and putting that all together. The future is what kind of the fans are really looking at right now.
Yeah, and talk about the NIL situation at MTSU. I know, you know, the world we're going into. I mean, it's a lot of the kids are all about the NIL. So what's that situation like at MTSU?
Yeah, that's another thing. Speaking of just the intensity and more investment into the program, there's been Raiders Rising, which is the NIL group that they've just made with the new staff, and getting them deals with different local restaurants and stuff like that. And so, yeah, they've definitely embraced it with the new staff more, especially more than the previous staff. And so you've seen like Nick Vadiato and other star players continually getting deals. And that's kind of a way that they want to really keep their older star players so far.
And last question for me is, you know, what is Coach Mason's, I guess, recruiting philosophy in your opinion? Is it a mixture of he wants to, you know, recruit the high school ranks and select, you know, just, transfers that fit the system, or is he going to do transfer heavy? I know a lot of coaches are more transfers in high school. You know, what's your thoughts on his situation there?
I think these first 2 years he's had to go transfer heavy, especially last year, just losing the amount of guys he did. I think they want to start getting back into high school. I think they have 15 commits right now. They want to end up probably around 20. But yeah, they definitely are going to tap in, especially in the trenches, pretty annually in the transfer portal. And then they also have a connection to the California junior colleges. And so they've been tapping into that. And so I think it'll be a mixture of all three. But yeah, I do think they want to, after this 25 class, really go heavy on the high school.
Larry?
So let's talk about specifics. And you mentioned Nick Vadiato. Last year, of course, threw for over 3,000 yards. This year, starting already over 1,000 yards. Tell us what we're going to see from him on Saturday.
Well, with the offensive line in the state it's in, you're going to see him use his legs a lot, I would imagine. He's not as much a dual threat to where he's looking to run, but if there's pressure, he will absolutely take off and create a good play with that if he can. As a passer, you know, they're going to try to get him in the intermediate is where he's going to thrive, and get him on routes breaking to the sideline, whether it's an out route or a post, just something like that where they can get it to one of his receivers. And then if they can push it down the field, his arm strength is a little limited, but they do want to push it down the field. But that ties back to the offensive line being able to protect long enough for that. But I think the intermediate is where he wants to thrive, and that's where they've really been hitting so far.
So on the defensive side, which, you know, Mason comes in as a defensive, that's what he's known for, is his defense. You know, Howes and Myers have both started the season really well. What are we going to see from the defense on Saturday?
Well, you're going to see a lot of players still out, I think. Devin Curtis, the starting Mike linebacker, went down late in the week last week before the game, and he's going to be out for an extended period of time. And the target goal from people I've talked to has been conference play coming up after this game, and they want to get everyone back. So we still don't know if either of the two starting cornerbacks will be playing in this game. Like you said, they put Marvin Myers over to corner from safety. And then Brendan Harris, he's out right now too. And they're still deciding if he wants to do surgery or not. So, I mean, you could see a very revamped secondary for this game. And then just up front, they want to blitz. They want to get you behind the chains, really, because they can stop the run. But it's just the front three going from a 4-3 to a 3-4. The front three is just not as big as you want it to be right now. And so if they want to get pressure, they're going to have to bring a lot of blitzing.
All right, so last one from me. Overall, Middle is first off, you opened against my alma mater, Tennessee Tech, and you eked out a win against an FCS opponent. I know that for a fact because I watched the game. And then you ran into 3 pretty tough teams, including losing pretty handily to Western Kentucky. So the season hasn't started well. What does Middle need to do better to right themselves for the second half of the season?
Really 3 things. They need to finish drives, especially when they get into opposing territory. They hired a very good special teams coordinator, but just in general, they've been making way too many mistakes on that. I don't if you want to put that on the coordinator, if you want to put on just the decision making, that's something they have to absolutely clean up. And then just the turnover battle. They can't. I think Vadiato's thrown a couple interceptions. They had 3 back-to-back fumbles in the first quarter that completely took them out of the game last week. And so those are the 3 things that they really have to cut down on and limit if they want to have a chance to win games, especially against an opponent like Memphis.
John?
So I want to move kind of back off the field here. Vance asked a really good question. I have a couple questions that'll close you out here. Obviously, conference realignment was all the buzz this weekend. So how does Middle see themselves as CUSA content? Would there be a desire to move up into an AAC? What's kind of the feel of the program in terms of, because that's going to be a huge additional investment, right? If something were to happen and Middle were to move up to the AAC, that is really stepping up. So what's kind of the feel? Is Middle sort of content with what they have and where they are?
Well, when with conference realignment, you had other conferences just looking around in general. First things first, MTSU and Western Kentucky would be a package deal anywhere. And then like with the MAC was looking around, but the just finances of that didn't work out. So they are open to listening to other conferences, but it would have to be the right situation for both MTSU and Western Kentucky. So I mean, you can never say never, especially. But I mean, they're content with Conference USA, but I feel like they would listen if the right opportunity presented itself elsewhere.
Yeah, I mean, it's nothing crazy. It's not like Cal and Miami are going to play a conference game this weekend that'll kick off at 10:30 Eastern time at night. So final question for me before we let you go. How do Middle fans feel about the game here at Memphis? Because the couple I've talked to, it's almost, I feel like Memphis sometimes, as much as we hate to be treated this way, we kind of treat Middle like little brother sometimes and don't give them maybe the respect they deserve. Is this a game that Middle players and coaches kind of say, hey, here's a chance for us on a more evenly competitive stage than, say, Mississippi or somebody like that? Here's a chance for us to kind of show what we're made of.
Absolutely. The players are ready for this game. Vadiato, he was at the Manning Passing Academy over the summer, and he roomed with Memphis's quarterback. So they've kind of had a competitive edge going between them. And just the players are ready to show that they can compete and try to pull out with a win in a big game like this, in a game where maybe they have more of a chance, like you said, than in Ole Miss. And then I think the fans are just ready to get past this and go to conference play.
All right. So last thing before we let you go, how do you see things shaking out on Saturday?
I think Memphis is going to have the advantage in the trenches on both sides. And I just think they're going to be able to run the ball and create explosive plays off of that. I think Memphis, I wouldn't say is as big of a disparity as the score that Western Kentucky ended up being, but I think it could be similar to the Duke game, where it's probably like 14-21 point victory for Memphis.
All right. Finally, Shayne, tell everybody how they can keep up with Middle this week.
Yeah, you can go to the site at GoMiddle. Very active on the boards, and if you want to follow me, I'm on X or Twitter or whatever you want to call it at ShayneP_media.
Awesome. Well, hey, Shayne, thanks for joining us, and good luck to the Blue Raiders the rest of the way.
Appreciate it.
Shayne Pickering from GoMiddle.com joining us here tonight to talk all things Middle Tennessee. Well, Brian, I'll start with you. What are your thoughts on the game Saturday?
I think this is one where Memphis players are gonna like take it very seriously and take it out, take their frustrations of the last game out on MTSU. Coaching wise, I don't think. I mean, we all know. I don't think Coach Silverfield is the one to try to run up the score. But I really do think Memphis players are out for blood. Out. I don't want to say revenge because I mean, obviously MTSU didn't do anything to Memphis, but they're out to prove a point that last week was a fluke. I don't think they get into the 40s, but I do think it'll be a dominating victory. So I think it'll be somewhere like 38-13. But yeah, I'm really interested to see how this defense responds. It was last week just an anomaly. Is it just a fluke, or is it more of a problem? Because I do think MTSU has some players that can give Memphis some problems. They just don't have enough of them. So 38-13 Memphis.
Larry,
this is going to be ugly, and I think it's going to be very similar to the Western Kentucky score, if I'm honest. The Western Kentucky beat them 49-21. I think this is it's going to be similar to the Ole Miss score. Maybe 48-10. Something like that. Memphis, there's just no way they can block us up front. We'll get to the quarterback a lot, and we'll be able to run the football. I think one of the things that came out last week was your ability to run the football effectively. The offensive line really showed a lot of cohesion. Middle's probably going to pack the box to try, and Memphis is going to be able to throw. And then I think you'll see Mario Anderson take control of the. This is a unfortunately Middle is playing us after a tough loss, and I think Memphis takes it out on them.
This is what I think I said on Twitter this week. This is what coaches call a get right game, where you kind of get everything right. I think it's going to be very, very similar to Troy, 38-17, somewhere through there. I just don't know that Ryan's built to run it up. I mean, and we're semantics at this point. We're picking, right? Like the difference between a 38, although there are people that will be greatly concerned with the final score of the game. I've seen lines everywhere from 24.5 to 28.5. As you saw in our first forecast there, courtesy of MemphisWeather.net, there is a chance of showers, a chance of rain. I just don't think Middle has the horses. I don't feel like they can keep up with Memphis. So I'll go 38-17. I think the running game's going to have a big day. The player, and I think I mentioned this in my BEL article for Go Middle Behind Enemy Lines, Jair Shorter. He had his first three catches and looked really good against Navy. I'm hopeful that this is a game where he can sort of have a coming out party, kind of assert himself in the offense and, take some pressure off Rock and Kobe and, the more weapons, the better. And if Memphis is still down, DeRosier is probably not back this week. You don't want to run Anderson to death. You want to, have other guys take touches. And, so he's kind of a player to me that is worth watching on Saturday. Well, all right, boys, we are at the time of the evening where we have to talk about the goings on from this weekend. So 30,000 foot recap. Memphis Pac-12 have been playing footsie for the past month. That is when things really kind of conversations got going and got started about a month ago, and then of course picked up steam. Memphis was never leaving without Tulane. That was not happening, and Tulane was never leaving without Memphis, much like Middle and WKU, especially in the situation they were looking to move to. It was a package deal. It was take both of us or take none of us. You know, we're content in some ways, you know, is the message I got. We're content where we are. We want to see what all of them, we'll get to what Tempernetti is trying to put together here in a minute, but we want to see what that looks like too in comparison to, you know, what you're talking about. And we're not, I was told that the words were said, we're not going to give away the farm and mortgage the entire future of the program to make a slightly better than lateral move. And that's just the reality of it. You know, people disagree with me about this all the time, but I don't really care. You're never going to convince me, and I said this when the Big East stuff happened, you're never going to convince me that after the new wears off, after the shiny new toy that all the fans want to see wears off, I'm not talking about Boise State. I'm not talking about Washington State, Oregon State. I'm talking about Fresno State on a Thursday night when Memphis is 5-3 and Fresno State is 3-5. Is that crowd going to be demonstratively larger than Memphis and UAB on a Thursday night? And the answer to me is no. So if you talk attendance, I think that all this would have done, and it's the reason the Mountain West schools that made the move, right, is it would have shook some of the dead weight off of the bottom. You know, that was the whole thing, is get out of the dead weight. But I'm also here to tell you that from a business perspective, attendance does not matter. No one cares how many people come to games. Attendance is down 31% across college football over the last 3 years, and it's going to continue to decline as televisions get nicer. I am right now broadcasting with a 49-inch ultra-wide screen in front of me. I guarantee you that the picture I get here is just as good as sitting in the press box or sitting in the 84th row at Simmons Bank Stadium. There are a lot of reasons attendance is going down. So attendance was not a factor. That didn't matter. Very surprised when I did that analysis that, you know, we think of all these schools having these huge stadiums. Memphis would have been by far the largest stadium in the Pac-12, whatever they are, Pac-6, Pac-8, 12, whatever. They'd have been by far the largest stadium. I don't
unless UNLV joins, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah. I don't think TV markets matter for this particular deal, because I'm here to tell you this deal is going to be non-linear. And you may say, well, John, what are you talking about? So linear is what Memphis has now with the AAC. ESPN, ESPNU, yes, they have a segment of games that are dedicated to Plus, but the body of the AAC TV deal is linear television. So the PAC deal is most likely not going to be linear. It's almost going to, I don't see a scenario where it is. And then Brian and Larry and I were talking, and we started hearing these numbers of 16 and 18, $16 million a year per school, 14 million per school. And I'm just sitting here, I'm thinking, guys, wait, that's not possible. They're not going to pay twice what Memphis is making now, because even though Memphis is a valuable television product, it ain't that valuable. Dan Wolken wrote a great article about it today, or it may have been last night, where he said, Memphis doesn't move the needle as much as Memphis thinks it does, and Oregon State isn't as valuable as Oregon State thinks it is either. The teams are actually closer together in value. So that's when I started thinking, guys, look, this media deal is going to settle in around 8, 9, somewhere through there. And, we were, oh, no. Well, the problem, and Jeb just said it here, you can't go on potential. You can't say, oh, if you're Memphis, I think we can make X. Memphis had consultants too, and those consultants came back and said, guys, this deal is 8 million, 8.5, 9 max. It's all going to be non-linear. You're going to be stuck on the CW when you are linear. It's going to be a lot of Apple TV. It's going to be, the money is not going to be worth the hassle. And I think Memphis fans got caught up in it from the perspective of the shiny new toy, right? Like we all, and look, nobody is more tired of playing Charlotte and Rice and North Texas than me. Nobody. I promise you, nobody is more tired of covering those games, watching those teams, hearing that idiot at Charlotte coach talk. Like nobody is more tired of that than we are. But the fact of the matter is, people have got, and I say this in the business world all the time about corporations, people have got to stop romanticizing this. College football is two things. It's a business and it's content. That's it. That's all it is. This is not about amateur athletics. This is not about student athletes. It's not about anything. It is content and a business. And that's it. That's the only way, because if you look at it through other eyes, you're going to be constantly disappointed. That doesn't mean you can't be a fan and enjoy the games. You just kind of have to know that at the end of the day, and no one cares.
And it doesn't also mean that the kids aren't out there playing for the school, not necessarily for themselves. But what it does mean is that at the end of the day, those schools are using that as a way to make money for the school. And you can't, I mean, the money and all that can't be separated, to your point, John. Like, it's not, first of all, I will tell you this, as someone who's been there, the kids, the players totally understand what's going on. Like we're not stupid. The school's using them and they're using the school. It's a transaction, right? And just like
transaction. Yep.
And just like that, the fans and the school is a transaction, right? And you watching the games and you going to the games. So to me, like you say, John, this is just content, and it's entertainment and it's content, and that's it. And if you look at it any other way, then you're kidding yourself, because it is truly, at the end of the day, just an entertainment business. And entertainment is largely about money. And that's how it is. I don't know how to say it.
Yeah, I mean, so the Pac-12 put the deal in front of Memphis on Sunday afternoon, is what I was told. Memphis got the term sheet that was reported Monday morning. They got it Sunday. Memphis and Tulane powwowed. I was told they were taken aback by the exit fee thing, that was not the understanding that they were working from, that the Pac-12 was only going to pay 10% at a max of $2.5 million of the exit fee. That is ultimately what I think broke the deal down, because people say, well, you could negotiate. The AAC was not negotiating that exit fee down. And the market, it's like we talked about, the market had been set with SMU. SMU set that market, and it was at $25 million.
Well, $25 million with 1 year. Memphis would not have less than a year. So to say that they were not going to negotiate, they would have negotiated. Now, would it go down to the 15, 16? No, but this is a hill I'll die on. It would not have been 25 million to get out. And so to me, the 25 million exit fee is a pipe dream, just like, possibly the 16, 17, 18 that we were hearing. Both numbers are a pipe dream. And for me, where I still think it was to me, Memphis is in a bad situation, because going is a gamble, staying is a gamble. Either way, you're gambling. Because let's take a look at it right now. If you have an undefeated AAC team, and let's say it's Memphis, pick a team, an undefeated Memphis team, and you have an undefeated Pac team in Oregon State, who gets in?
Memphis, all day and twice on Sunday. And
I would wholeheartedly disagree. I wholeheartedly disagree. Look at the strength of schedule. Any number you want to look at. Yes, that does matter.
Does not matter.
Yeah, when they go in there and talk, they talk about strength of schedule. I agree. Matters.
They talk about it, and it comes down to who is going to be sexier. Again, back to what I'm saying, it's content and business.
This will all be settled next year, and I am willing to sit back and wait. And it'll actually be 2026. So from 2026 on, let's just go 4 years. Out of those 4 years, I'd venture to say only once would an AAC team get in over a PAC team out of the next 4 years? But we'll have to wait and see. And, we could say this and replay it. But look at any measure, the ESPN, FPI, their power index or the Macy index, the PAC as it is has way better numbers than the AAC. The AAC has more teams in the 100s than the PAC has members.
But here's the flip side to that. When was Memphis at their highest level of success in basketball? When they were what? Big fish, little bitty pond.
But you had John Calipari too.
But I'm saying the blueprint is there. Do you want to go be another?
Yeah, we have to stick to one sport. Basketball is completely different than football trying to get into the playoffs. 64 teams or 64 plus get into the big dance. You don't have that many.
I'm not saying about getting in the. I'm talking about when did Memphis have their highest level of success? When they were in a. And I will die on this. That league, from a basketball perspective, is way worse than the AAC from a football perspective is now. Liberty got in last year. Liberty would have been in the playoff. They'd have been the playoff game.
They would not have been in the playoff if the PAC had been a group of 5 team.
But see, here's the other thing you're going to have to think about.
That's what we have to keep remembering. If the PAC was a group of 5 team right now, Liberty would not have gotten in, and Memphis would have not gotten in. And I think in 2019 they wouldn't have gotten in over a PAC team. But that's just my opinion. We'll wait. You have to wait and see.
Here's what I think the part of that people are missing. What I mean when I talk about that. If you go to the PAC, your goal is to shed dead weight. That's the only goal, because the money was never going to be much better than it is now. You just want to shed dead weight. So now you find yourself in who's a middle of the pack SEC West team, or you find yourself Rutgers in the Big Ten West or wherever they were, where now instead of having a shot at going undefeated, everybody's going to be 9-3. Every single team's going to be 9-3. And I don't care what people can swear on a stack of Bibles to me that, they don't really care about football. They don't care about TV ratings and all that. But it's the best. That is absolute and total bullshit. I'm sorry. It is. If people don't think that what do we hear all the time, guys? The eye test. If people don't think that being sexy matters, then they're deluding themselves. And the only sexy team in the PAC is Boise. And you want to know the other problem that Boise State and the PAC are going to have? People are going to be in bed when their games are on. And people are like, oh, no, they watch the game. Condoleezza Rice, who's not on the committee anymore, is not sitting in her house in Washington, D.C., watching Stanford and Miami at 11:45 p.m. on Saturday night. Like, it's just not happening. And Jeb hits the nail on the head. Can you pass the eye test if you aren't on the ESPN family of channels? Because that, to me, is what it comes down to. Are all the metrics, was this a no-brainer from a football perspective? Absolutely, 100%. Every measure on the field you look at, Memphis should have jumped at this opportunity. But because the money wasn't going to be worse, I think is probably, we can fairly say that. There was uncertainty, but I don't think the money would have been worse once you got over the hurdle of the initial, exit fee or whatever. And why couldn't Memphis have paid that out over 10 years? You know what I'm saying? Like, I know there was room, but I think some of it, whereas Memphis got their feelings hurt a little bit too. How much, and Tulane too, how much did the Pac-12 pay the Mountain West for? Like 100 and something million? Like, there was going to be 110 million, some astronomical number. So you're telling me you are trying to convince me, Brian, I am convincing you to come to work with me. I'm going to pay Larry to get Larry to move over. I'm going to buy out his house. Larry lives in a decent neighborhood. I'm going to pay $500,000 towards Larry's relocation to come work with me. I'm going to pay you $75,000 to do the same thing. So I think that enters into it as well. Of look, I always say it's a business, and you can't cloud business with emotion. But
I just
that's
don't
really
want to hear. Yeah, I just don't want to hear when an undefeated or one loss Pac team gets in and undefeated or what same metrics. If it's the same team, we'll have to wait and see. But I do not see an Oregon State getting left out over a Memphis, UTSA, or something like that. Because I mean, look at their metrics now. You know, the highest ranked according to ESPN is Tulane at 55. Washington State's 21. Memphis, the highest ranked Massey is 49 with Memphis. The highest ranked Massey, Washington State, 21. I mean, that's what I'm saying. It's when you look at financials, wholeheartedly agree with you. There, to me, the competition is where I'm in the line with. Going forward, it's more of a gamble to stay in the AAC and not go to the playoffs. You're saving money because you don't have the travel costs, but you're also not going to the college football playoff. Which one's the biggest gamble? That's where, well, like I said, we'll just have to wait and see. But to me, it's more of a gamble staying and not going to the playoff than going to the Pac and going to the playoff.
I think if you're Memphis, you can't afford the financial gamble. I think that is what it comes down to. You're in the midst of a $250 million stadium renovation. You're in the midst of $23 million.
Yeah.
And you're insulted. You know, frankly, again, you want me to come join you. I got it made because what I'm doing now is I'm taking what you're giving and I'm going back to Tim Pernetti and I'm saying, you know what, we're probably going to go because I'm going to sweeten the pot over here. That's the other part of this is it's all everybody's using now. I think Larry, you said it earlier, everybody's using everybody. Like this is, it's leverage, right? It's what whenever a Memphis coach had a good season and suddenly is tied to the Mississippi or Mississippi State job. Well, what do we call that? The sextoning, right? It's the same thing. I'm using you for leverage. I mean, I'm using pieces against each other. But I just think that I guess I don't come wholeheartedly buy your argument because I do think that being sexy matters. I do think that people that matter and that pick these teams are going to be more apt to, unless you are just overwhelmingly. Now, if Oregon State goes out and they go 11 and 12 and 1 and they win their games by an average of 28 points, sure. Then yes, they're clearly the best team. But I just think the risk you run is if you go jump in that, your success, you've had your most success when you are around less of the best. Like that's been your MO. Memphis in football, to get better, what they do, they schedule down. Like this is a model that works. I think what is going to make your argument valid over the next few years is this absolute crap hole of a non-conference scheduling disaster Memphis is in. Going to Georgia State, going on the road to Sunbelt, going to Middle Tennessee, going to Southern Miss. Like, that's not what teams that want to compete in the college football playoff do. They do not go play Southern Miss sorry, Larry. Sorry, Caroline. They do not go play Southern Miss on a Thursday night in November on the road when Southern Miss is 3-6 and Memphis is 9-0 and walks into an absolute hornet's nest. And the money just wasn't there. This just did not make financial sense. And at the end of the day, that's all that matters.
For me, I'm more mad not that Memphis didn't go to the Pac. I'm still mad at the AAC for not strengthening the football conference when they had the chance. Because that's where my anger would lie. And that's why I think I would, when it's time to jump, I would have jumped just to get out of the AAC, because Memphis had a chance to really. I mean, you had Appy State, Liberty, and James Madison. Those three schools are you plug them in instead of UAB, Charlotte, and Rice. If you just swap those three out, I don't think Memphis is looking to leave anywhere, because those three schools, without a doubt, with those three schools in, and you take the three deadweights out, I would be with you on that argument that the AAC is better than the Pac because of those teams. But yeah, my anger is with the AAC the last go around for not inviting the teams that they should. That's where all my anger would be.
Yeah, I think. Well, let me just say, and I'm not going to get into the specifics of this, but Liberty is a non-starter. Liberty is going to be where they are forever because no conference wants to touch Liberty for call it is political religious reasons.
Oh, no, I understand that, but there's still
they don't
Coastal.
Yeah, Coastal. Right. It's not like the league. It's not like they didn't have better choices.
Yes,
go
and
get
they just did.
You mean to tell me you couldn't have gotten Air Force? You couldn't have convinced Air Force? You couldn't have convinced James Madison, Old Dominion? We had to go get Charlotte, Rice, and FAU? You already had South Florida. You're already in the Florida market. I mean, you're already there. Like, you didn't need to go and just – it was a really bad decision. And again, then Memphis, of course, didn't help itself on the Tombow and Farewell Tour when you're scheduling, like I said, Georgia State. And
yeah.
Memphis should have bye games, right? I think we can all three agree with that. Memphis is a level of program where it is okay to have a bye game. You don't have to go to Georgia State anymore. Georgia State's going to take a $500,000 check and come play you, right? Like, they're not going to turn that down or demand, because they're not in a position to demand anything, because you go, all right, well, fine, we're not going to play you. Hey, random Sunbelt Conference USA school, Louisiana Tech, do you want a $500,000? Sure. So they're not in a position to turn things down. But I think Memphis is hamstrung, and Memphis was, look, I said this to you guys, and I wouldn't have wanted to have this decision, because this is for a new athletic director.
No win.
This is a
you're in a no-win
solution. There is not. So when that is the case, you have to fall back. What do we talk about with Ryan Silverfield all the time? It's 3rd and 7. I need a first down. I got to have a play. I got to know what my strength is. If you are the leader of a large athletic department, you've got to clear the noise and say, what lens do I look through things the best at? And for Dr. Scott, it's now, to me, pretty apparently business. That's the lens he kind of sees things through. And he made the right call from a business perspective. But see, here's the other thing, and I think Jeb even alluded to this. Guys, this is temporary. Like this, we're all committed. Yeah, I was committed
until you're not.
Yeah, you're committed until you're not. Like that's the thing. But I am interested, and I know people are already poo-pooing it, but I'm really interested at this private equity move that Tim Pernetti is trying to look at, and trying to, maybe some NIL stuff, and trying to, again, look at this from a business perspective. We tried a TV executive. That clearly didn't work, because he was so enamored with having the Charlotte market and the Rice market and the Birmingham market, and not getting actual good teams. It's like when I see the TV reporters complain about things, it's like, that's a dying model for a reason. This is the model. The non-linear streaming. Everybody, I don't mean this as well, but everybody's a journalist in some respects. Everybody, blah, blah, blah. This is the way. This is how it's going to be. We cannot like it. I think we can all agree there are some people that should not have podcasts. There's probably quite a few people that say these three bozos here shouldn't have one. But this is what it is, to steal another John Calipariism. It's where we are. And I asked the question, and Larry, I want to kind of pose this to you. I don't think we ever really answered it. Is Memphis the largest AAC market that gives a damn about the team that they're in? You know what I mean? That the team that's in that market, because you've got a bunch of us clustered together, like Birmingham, New Orleans, and Memphis are, I think it's 49, 50, and 51. UTSA Philadelphia is a bigger market. I don't think
Yeah.
people give two
Now,
craps.
San
about
Antonio-
Memphis.
no one cares
San
about
Antonio.
Temple.
San Antonio cares about UTSA. They
That,
really.
that was my one. Is I don't know that vibe. I don't know that. You know, I don't
That's
know
my
that vibe down
sense
there.
from talking to people there. They really do care about it. I don't know if Memphis is bigger than Tulsa. I would think it is.
Oh yeah, huge
Yeah.
market disparity. Yeah, Memphis is probably 56. But does anybody in Tulsa care about Tulsa?
That's
kind
a
of
weird vibe too,
yeah.
because you've got Arkansas and Oklahoma State.
Oklahoma State,
and they're
Oklahoma,
all right there. So it's not that different from Memphis with Ole Miss and Mississippi State. But I think, to your point, probably Memphis has probably the largest fan base in the city of any size. UAB's got a lot of fans there, but you know, obviously that little school in Tuscaloosa draws a lot of attention.
They got a lot of college football fans, but I don't think there's a lot of UAB fans.
Yeah, Memphis and Birmingham consistently, when ESPN releases their most watched college football TV markets, Memphis and Birmingham are always in the top 4 or 5 of that list. But I think that is more, and again, I'm just a dumb guy with a dumb podcast, but I think that's more like what the model, if you want to look at markets, that's fine. But look at markets where the people in said market give a crap about said team. Like the only reason, well, I'm not going to say the only reason, because Rutgers isn't a bad school, and I'm not picking on Rutgers here, but the only reason Rutgers is in the Big Ten,
they need to be picked on.
I mean, that's the only reason they're in the,
yes.
Good school, don't really fit the profile of the Big Ten that well. But that's why, is they brought that market. I got so tired of hearing that. They don't deliver that market. So I thought that was interesting that Memphis is probably the largest. And I would say it's clear in basketball, right? Like there's nobody close in basketball where people actually care about the team in that market. Because, I had somebody bring up Florida Atlantic to me the other day, and they're 9-win, 9-loss season away from falling back into the pit of irrelevance where they belong. But I don't know. I think Memphis made the right call, and it's not easy to see. It's not easy to go. Memphis had a chance to go to a more competitive league, play better teams. But I think it may have been us but somebody else in chat said, I don't think it was as much as Memphis wanted to go play better teams. They just wanted to get away from the neighborhood they're in, right? Like it doesn't really matter. But then you look at it now, today, with the clarity of hindsight, right? What did Dan Wilkins say last night? That the Pac-12 is now in the UTEP, New Mexico State aisle doing their shopping. And there's a chance, guys, that neither league survives because they both have to get to 8.
Yeah.
And they're both at 7. And they may. And then, I've had 2 or 3 people float this idea. Wolken has done it publicly. I've had a couple of people do it privately. If you're Tim Pernetti, you pick up the phone, you call the Pac-6 and say, guys, come on down. Let's become the first 20-team Super League, and let's be the best G5 league, a true coast-to-coast league with good teams. The problem is, what do you do with the Charlottes and the Rices and those guys? And that's why the Pac-6 would probably not be as reticent to make the jump and say, yeah, let's do that, because there's so much dead weight at the bottom of this conference. And I don't mean this to belittle anybody else, because 10 years ago, people were sitting here talking about Memphis being the dead weight in the conference. It's not that those schools can't get better. It's just we have no evidence that they're going to.
Well, and John, we've all talked about this in the NIL era. How is a school like ECU? How is a school like Southern Miss? How is a school? We just had Middle Tennessee on talking about this exact subject. How do they compete? And the answer is they can't. They can't. There's nobody going to give them $25 million. That's not happening. And they can't compete. That's, if you look at the AAC right now, the reason the 4 schools were being considered is that those are the schools that can afford to compete. Realistically,
Yeah.
it's Memphis, Tulane, USF, UTSA, and that's it. That's a fact. Now, does that mean we're going to win every game? No, but that does mean that we have the most resources. So the reality of this situation is no matter how we shake this out, there's 4 teams in the AAC that can realistically compete for players. I'm not talking about can other teams get players? Yes. But if you want a guy, a difference maker, that you can actually afford him. And that's where this comes in, guys, no matter how we shake this out. And it doesn't matter which conference we go to. Really, it doesn't. At the end of the day, this is all about who can afford to compete. And that's what we need to sit around and think about. If we go, is that going to affect our ability to afford to compete?
It would.
And that's how we had to look at it.
Because there's 2 ways to look at it, financially and competitively.
Right.
Financially, Memphis made the perfect decision staying. Competitively, complete opposite.
I'm not disagreeing with you, Brian, but I just think that you're right.
That matters anymore.
More competitive, but I don't know that we could have afforded to compete.
Yeah.
And the other thing we have to do, and some people overplay this hand a lot, especially on the Twitter machine, is we do have to look beyond football and men's basketball, right? Like you do have to look beyond those. And you are going into an absolutely hellacious baseball conference. College baseball is the fastest growing of the college sports. I think I haven't paid that close attention. You're going into a hellacious softball situation. You're probably going to have to add a sport here or there that you don't currently have just for numbers, but I don't know about women's basketball.
Send the swimming team and the tennis team to San Jose or Fresno. Sorry,
Fresno. Yeah,
Fresno.
But no, it's the same thing, right?
Right. I mean, look, I've been on planes. You guys know I fly a lot. I've been on planes with teams from the Big 12, and I've also been on planes with teams from the ACC, and I'm not talking about the football that's flying in chartered planes or the basketball. I'm talking about the baseball guys that are schlepping to the back of a plane, because they're flying commercial from Memphis to Dallas, and God knows where they're going from there, right? Or Dallas to Memphis to play. I mean, guys, you just don't. This is not just about football and basketball, and I want to make it very clear that those other kids compete just as hard, and so I was like Brian initially. I can tell you this: Sunday when I heard that the odds are very small that this was actually going to work out, and it was probably what you said, John, when they had the offer sheet actually in front of them. That's when I first started hearing, because up to then I had pretty much heard, yeah, we're gone. I mean, I'll be honest, I told you guys that we're probably gone. And Sunday, this was like, I don't think this is going to happen, and I was really disappointed. I was really upset about it. But
I think the initial reaction is competitively thinking, but when the financials started coming out, a lot of people that were upset were like, "Huh," and I was one of them. I said that. Oh, I was wrong. Okay, financially, yeah, Memphis made the right decision.
And Memphis did look at. I heard this, and I think Dan Wilkins said it too. I heard something similar to this, that we looked at a football only option and taking everything else to the Big East.
Yeah, that never would have worked because we don't culturally fit with the Big East. The version of it I heard was everything except basketball, men's and women's, and they were either going to go to the Missouri Valley or the A-10 with basketball, which that would have been a great. No harm, no foul here. That would have been great from a basketball perspective. Get you in a competitive multi-bid league, because that's the other reality with basketball. We don't talk about basketball much here, but the AAC is going to be a one big league, right? Like And so you're back to that
Always.
Calipari mentality of, if you slip up and lose a game, you have no business. You might
Like
get
Rice
in
last year.
instead of being an 8, you're going to be a 12, and you're going to have
Yeah.
a terrible matchup in the first round. So having basketball in a multi-bid league is a good idea, which the A10, Missouri Valley, like those conferences all are multi-bid leagues. There was even, Larry, you're going to laugh, somebody told me that there was talk of parking all the Olympic sports and basketball in the OVC. And I said, that's not a good fit. Like, that's not even a good fit for baseball, because Tennessee Tech would have run Memphis baseball off the field and embarrassed them. So there was just this again was just one of those things. Fairly new president. This is Dr. Hargrave's third year, right? He come in during COVID or right before. Anyway, new president, brand new AD to walk in and go, okay, guys. And out of nowhere, like it always is, conference realignment just came out of nowhere. The Pac-12 sat up like the Undertaker, rose from the dead, like out of the blue. And tough decision. We'll see. I mean, you're right, Brian. Here's the thing. Oh, one other thing I do want to clear up, and Dan Wolken has already cleared this up, but yes, a lot of Memphis fans are very concerned about the look-in clause in 2026 that ESPN has for the contract. There is no de-escalation marker in that, meaning ESPN can't come in and go, well, these guys are gone, so we're cutting your pay. That's not, the look-in is upping only, right? It's only moving up. Or they also have said, or I've been told, that they're going to stay out of distribution, that they don't care how, once we give you the check, what you do with it is your call. What's next? I think you're going to see in the coming days a unequal revenue distribution system will be floated. And
what I wouldn't mind seeing for distribution, what English Premier Soccer does. Whoever wins the league gets the most money. If you finish last, you get the least amount of money. That incentivizes. Yeah. No one gets an even share. Whoever finishes, and it gets less and less as you go down. That incentivizes everyone to make sure you finish as high as possible. I don't think that would ever fly, but personally, I would love to see that model, because then you're not only fighting for a conference championship, but you're fighting for that championship money. You're going to get, that school's going to get the most money if you finish first.
Jeb just posted in the chat, unequal distribution. ECU will squeal about that. Leave. Leave. And I am tired of watching Memphis, and this is going to be a brief rant. I am tired of watching Memphis sitting back and taking one for the team, like we have done in whatever league Memphis has been in for the past how many ever knows years, whether it's bad scheduling, or we're going to move the conference tournament, or we're going to do this, or we're going to do that. And Memphis just kind of meekly sits there and says, okay, well, for the better of the league, we'll do this. Guys, that time is over. Memphis needs to start swinging the big stick they have. Memphis and Tulane and USF have, and I'll throw UTSA in there, they have more of the big stick. And I know they have more votes, but here's the thing. At some point, ESPN says, well, we're not going to get involved in the distribution. Well, then ESPN sits down with Charlotte and Rice and East Carolina and says, guys, you can go. Like, we will jet it, because that's the devil side of the contract, right? Is ESPN will jettison your ass to the Sun Belt and not think twice about it. And they will move it, and they will make it happen. But I just think that, Memphis needs to start pulling their weight a little bit. And they did that in this negotiation by all accounts. They were not bullied. They were not pushed around. This is very reminiscent of when Memphis was working on Justin Fuente's contract, and Jimmy Sexton was trying to pull his same old crap.
It was Jim McElwain. Jim McElwain was who Sexton was representing, and he wanted XXXX. And finally, somebody said, "Well, you're not dealing with RC anymore," and they didn't hire McElwain and went and hired Justin Fuente, who was not a Jimmy Sexton. Anyway, I didn't mean to interrupt. Anyway.
Brad Martin, and I think that was when the tide kind of started to turn. And in this negotiation, guys, Memphis has been, they said, I have no reason to not believe what Jeb's saying, that Dr. Scott's the smartest guy to ever sit in that seat.
Maybe.
I don't know that we've ever had anybody with doctor in their name in that seat, and that accounts for something. And
Yeah.
Well, you saying it wasn't Charles Cabanero?
that's a little before, well, not before my time, but I wasn't. I don't want to make any of our
Anyway, Jeb knows what I'm saying.
Angry. But so, all right, so we're off next week because we're off. Memphis is off to get ready for South Florida. The next week, Larry and I are out, so Sam will be with Brian. I think Sam Shoemaker. And if y'all aren't reading Sam and following Sam, you guys are really, really missing out, because Sam does really good work. He's great at analysis. Young writer, much better writer than this old guy that's been hacking around for a long time. A really sharp guy, and you should really check his stuff out on the site. But he will join Brian for that, and I'm sure you'll have who is it from South Florida? We have him on every year. We play South Florida, huh?
Yeah, Kelly Quinlan.
Yeah. So I'm sure they'll be around, and then we'll be back the week after that. Yeah, Larry and I on a cruise ship together. What could possibly go wrong here? I'm actually on a ship. I'll leave Friday, so I will be watching Middle Memphis at sea at 4:30 in the afternoon. So I'm going out of LA, so wish me luck, because our dinner time out there is 8:15, which, Brian, that would mean you'd be eating dinner at 11:15 at night, which is 10:15 for me, which is bad enough. But yeah, so I think things will calm down on the conference realignment front probably for the rest of this year. I think, other than the Pac-12 and Mountain West have apparently sued each other now, which is the greatest thing ever.
It would be great if the
Mountain West poaching. Isn't that right? For poaching, because of the scheduling agreement that they set up with the Mountain West, and then they took the Mountain West schools, and now they're suing the Mountain West because the Mountain West says, that's fine, you broke the agreement, now pay us. As Andrew Brandt says, guys, there will be lawyers, and billable hours are undefeated.
Yep. And if the AAC is listening, you can do us all a favor and kick out Temple and invite someone else. Just that way, the AAC is more competitive. I'm just saying. They've been kicked out once before.
They've been kicked out of like 2 conferences, haven't? Didn't the MAC kick them out too? Or did they?
I just remember I remember when the Big East kicked them out.
Yeah, they went to the MAC, and I think that was a weird fit to begin with. And you know what's weird? I'll close with this. Like, nobody ever talks about the MAC in conference realignment. Are they like I don't mean this in a competitive way, but are they like the perfect league of like-minded, content universities that they're like, you know what? We're good playing Western Michigan every year. We're good going to Buffalo. We're good. Miami of Ohio, we're good. I always find that weird that they are just,
to me, them, the Sun Belt has done an excellent job too.
Well,
yeah, just seeing who they are.
I'll say this for both those conferences. One of the things that's really cool is that they all have, the beer league. That's really good. They all have, especially the MAC, they all have their own identity, but is to what you said, John, their identities are really close to each other. Like,
yeah, right.
It's really odd when you go to a MAC campus, because I've been to like Miami of Ohio. I've been to I've been to Toledo. I've been to the one just south of Toledo, whatever that is.
Akron.
Yeah. BGSU.
Bowling Green. Yeah,
Bowling Green. They're all very similar. Like, they look similar. They have similar buildings. Like, it's really weird. And so, to me, that's it. And I think that what I hope Memphis does find at some point is a bit of stability, because I do think it's hard on the school and the athletic department to always, it seems like every 10 years be in flux. And that's really been hard. I think the last 30 years that's been true.
Yeah, it is. It is difficult. Well, so I'll be back. What does that mean? Let's see. If I'm out the 8th, I will We'll be back October the 15th after the South Florida. Wow, it seems like forever. But where did this year go? Like, where has this year gone? We are already at October. It's unbelievable to me. So until next month. I do want to send out thoughts and good wishes to all the people of the Panhandle of Florida with hurricanes going to be bearing down on them. If you have family and friends down there, please keep them in your thoughts because it's probably not going to be a good situation. So until October, for the best co-host in all the land, John Maddox, signing off. Thanks to Brian Moss, Larry Marley, and of course Shayne Pickering from GoMiddle.com. You're listening to Tigers Night. Thanks a lot, and we will see everybody in 2 weeks.